4 items from the Community Affairs Committee.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, before I read these, I just wanted to state that Community Affairs Committee meeting last week did not have a quorum and thus was unable to forward a recommendation to the council. So the 4 items that are on the agenda here are here before you for consideration. Any consideration of these items does need to come with a suspension of the rules. So with that, I'll read the items. Ordinance amending section 24.13.040 of the Wauwatosa Municipal Code related to stormwater management. Resolution approving a 3-year memorandum of understanding between the Wauwatosa Police Department and the Wauwatosa School District. Resolution selecting and approving alternative for Schoonmaker Creek Watershed Flood Mitigation Project, CIP project number 3005. And resolution naming the city park at 116th Street, Gilbert Avenue, Firefly Grove Park.
Alder Lowe.
Yeah, I'd like to approve all items with item number 3 selecting option B, which was the cheaper alternative, and approve all items under suspension of the rules.
Is there a second? Alder Brandon seconds. Thank you. All right, we're going to take 2 of these items separately, 3 and 4. Is there any discussion on items 1 and 2? Any discussion? Alder Mindel.
Thank you. So just to clarify on the motion at hand, it's passing these items 3 and 4 will be separate, and we have voted. Do we have to vote to suspend the rules first?
You can include that. It can be included in the motion
Okay.
as it was, because it's a simple majority, just like the regular.
All right, so I'll just start. As a process guy, I strongly disagree with suspending the rules this evening. Second is, I was thinking on item 2 for the 3-year memorandum of understanding. I'm so glad to see that that's done and completed. Just bear with me here, as I think I'm the youngest member on council. The thing is how society has changed is I think millennials will be the last generation that remembers a time when we didn't need things like this memorandum of understanding. And I wish as a society we could be better, that we don't need things like this. That being said, SROs are a vital component to our schools in the modern context in 2024. And I fully support this memorandum. But I think, as a council going forward, maybe we can try to find ways to minimize the burden on our youth dealing with all the things that they deal with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Any other discussion on items 1 and 2? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items pass unanimously. All right, next we have number 3, the Schoonmaker Creek Watershed Alternative. Any discussion on that? Alder Mindel.
Sure. So I'm sure many of you got a letter from the Washington Highlands Association today, and reading through that and kind of thinking about the comments that were made from my constituents last week, I do have an amendment for this evening. I move to amend the resolution to include the consideration of the restoration and or naturalization of the open channel as needed, working with the Washington Highlands Association, Washington Highlands Association and Highlands residents with option B storm sewer. Thank you.
Is there a second? Alder Champagne. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify your motion, did you say restoration and naturalization?
And or,
Okay.
however that's annotated.
All right. The item on the floor for discussion right now is solely the motion to amend to include restoration and naturalization. Go ahead, Alder Lowe.
I'll be voting no on the amendment, and here's why. We had literally over 10 hours of discussion on item number 3 in the last 2 years. If you remember, we had a very lengthy process just to get to where we are today, especially for the new alders. We went from 17 different alternatives. 17 down to 3, which was another 3-hour discussion just to go from 3 to 2. Okay, now then last week, a whole nother discussion on an item that we didn't even vote on. But with the presentation that was laid out last week, it was millions of dollars cheaper for option B. So as you can imagine, in a city of 50,000 residents, when you're looking at 17 different alternatives, not everyone's going to agree on everything. Someone's going to feel like, well, they should have went with this option when it was 17 different options for us to choose from. I am trusting our city staff. I am trusting the outside consultants that we hired that specialize in looking at this type of thing for every city. They went through a very lengthy process to come up with points of consideration, how this would affect residents, cost, time frame, and option B was overwhelmingly in the positive point total compared to option 1. Amendments on this, it's too late for any type of amendments on this. When you go through 17 different options, again, not everyone's going to be satisfied. That doesn't mean that we're leaving residents behind. That doesn't mean that further improvements can't come down the road. And I'm sure further improvements will come down the road. But where we are in this place and at this time, it's time to move forward with this option. Thank you.
Just the amendment that we're making does not change option B. That maintains.
Well, I think everyone can decide that for himself or herself. Alder Mollenauer.
Yeah, and that's my understanding of what my colleague is stating. So it's, the words you used were consideration. Okay, so this is not let's be clear. The area that he's referring to is private property. It is owned by the Washington Home Association, which is obviously the Highlands Homes Association. He's just saying that he wants it to be taken into account that option B, which is we're not changing anything, would be mindful of the effect on the open water area, which is what you're referring to, correct?
Open channel, yeah.
Yes. So as I understand it, this is not a commitment to do anything. It's just to be mindful of what the open channel and the effect of option B on the open channel when further decisions are made in the micro sense versus the macro decision before us today. So I will support the motion. It is not committing us for anything, and just to be clear, it is still in favor of option B.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
All right, I'm confused, so I'm going to ask that the motioner explain, because consideration of restoration and naturalization, according to Alder Lowe, and it would seem to be my understanding, would require us to consider spending money on restoration and naturalization. After the council a couple of years ago voted not to consider that or to spend a dime on that. So could you please explain what you intend by this motion so that everyone understands it?
Refer back to the letter the Highlands sent us today. It's for consideration and discussion with the Washington Highlands Association. The big crux of the matter that has occurred is when we voted on the options, there has been a stop in the dialogue about the open channel due to the constraints of the motions. And I think now is a great time, as recommended by my constituents, that conversation include consideration.
Well, I'm going to read from the letter. It doesn't say what you just said. It says, "We strongly urge the committee to include the restoration or improvement of the open channel as part of the overall project investment." It's not consideration, it's inclusion. There's a difference between inclusion and consideration. So it is not what the Homes Association is asking for. What you're saying is something different. Is that right?
How can I come to us tonight and ask for money for the open channel when those conversations haven't even happened?
Well, okay, but it's not what they're asking for. The letter we received today was asking that the restoration and naturalization be included in the approval tonight of the project.
Okay.
Okay, Alder Moldenar.
Okay. I don't quite view it that way. I view it that, and I'm paraphrasing here from the letter. I don't have it electronically. I have it. I did not print it out.
I have it right here.
Yeah, I'm aware of the letter. I did read the letter. I'm paraphrasing here. The concern by the Home Association is option B may have an effect on the open water. We want to be mindful of the fact that if option B, which is what is before us tonight for the motion to approve, affects that open water area, we want that under consideration. In other words, if we're going to do option B, and we're going to find out it can only handle a 70. I'm just coming up with this, a 75-year rain event. We get a 100-year rain event, and it causes a mass flow, and we engineeringly have come to the conclusion that water will have to be offloaded through the open channel area. We want that to be front and center so that our residents are cognizant of the effect of that, because the way this is being put forward is this will handle, as I understand it, all 100-year rain events with what's before us, at least this part of the Schoonmaker project. I view it as we just want to have it on the radar. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So that's how I envision what Alder Mindell's saying.
Alder Phillips.
I'll be voting against this amendment. When this was before the council, this was exactly what we warned of, myself and another colleague, that we were told not to touch the private property of the Highlands. We discussed that there were options that were in consideration of this open channel, and the feedback was don't touch it, don't consider an amendment to consider any of those options. And I think it was foreshadowed that this would be a concern, that there was an option and an opportunity for the Highlands to even have the city help fund the issues going on in that channel. So at this point, I think that window is passed, and I'll be voting against this amendment.
Alder Foley.
At the Community Affairs Committee last week, I may be remembering this incorrectly, but I thought there was a comment from either the consultants or Mr. Worley or Mr. Simpson talking about the water, if this project, option B, comes to fruition and it meets what is planned to meet, the water flowing through the channel will be 30% less or 40% less, something like that. But, Mr. Mayor, if Mr. Worley or Mr. Simpson can speak to that concern, that'd be terrific.
Mr. Worley, could you come forward? Mr. Simpson? Do you understand what you're being asked to address?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
You are correct. Option B reduces the flows in the open channel portion of the creek for the 100-year rain event.
Thank you. Alder Wilkie.
I also will be voting no on the amendment. We did have the opportunity a few years ago, and I remember that opportunity was not taken to further include and discuss this, and we moved forward with options that did not include touching the private property. So I'll be voting no on the amendment.
Alder Champagne.
Just a question, point of clarification for Alderperson Mindell. So we are not agreeing to necessarily commit city money, but maybe more explore the impact that option B would have. So then the homeowners association could kind of pivot or plan on how to manage their park and waterway as kind of a result of the option B being implemented. That's my understanding of the amendment.
I would say that interpretation is generally correct.
Generally correct. Is it correct or incorrect?
I cannot speak directly for the Washington Highlands Association, but what I can say is as an association themselves, communication to help them with plans and figuring out how the creek is all going to work, because there still will be water going through the open channel when this is done. And I just want to also clarify by a point that was made, last time we had talked about this, the concept for the open channel was just completely leveling it and then doing like a giant open channel through the Highlands. And so we would lose our parks and all that. This is not, having this consideration for the project is just offering an expanded, I don't want to say scope, that's too strong of a word, but a larger, more expansive way for the Highlands to engage the city so they can figure out their next steps too.
Thank you, that's helpful. I mean, I have it written from last week that it would decrease water flows from, in the creek for 40 to 60%, I think, okay. Which, just in my experience, could drastically kind of impact the management of, just if it's dry, like if we have a dry season or whatever. I'm in support of data because I like data. I'm not in support of necessarily committing the city to spend money on, I guess, a private property, but I am in support of just at least opening the door to collecting the data so then the HOA and the private property can at least manage their property correctly. I would hate to see private property impacted negatively because of, trying to essentially solve a city problem.
Mr. Worley, could you come forward, please? Again, sorry to. When the city engages in a project of this type and scope, does it coordinate with surrounding private property owners?
Yes, we do.
So that's just a matter of routine.
Yes, it is.
So this wouldn't change what you would do.
No, it would not.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? He's not admitted to the meeting. He's been excused tonight. I have a question of potential conflict. One of the aldermen is a property owner in the Highlands and therefore has an undivided interest in this land. Does that create a conflict of interest?
In this case, the undivided interest is just as the landowner and resident of the city, and would not treat the alder any differently from the rest of those members. It's not a controlling member, is not have a controlling financial interest in that. So I wouldn't see it as being a direct conflict.
All right. Anybody else have a comment? Alder Wilkie?
I just see this as an opportunity that there's one more chance of the city funding, taking care of that. I mean, it is a beautiful, parkway throughout that subdivision development. But it has not been kept up and has not been maintained by them. And this is another way to try to loop it into this project for the city and the rest of the taxpayers who don't live in that neighborhood to pay for their beautiful landscape and waterway. So I just am not in favor, and we did have a discussion. I remember specifically asking you, don't want the option where it helps the parkway get improved? That you were new here, maybe you missed the ball on that one, but it moved forward with these other two options, and we should just stay forward with taking care of our portion of the job as a city, not the private property.
Anyone else? All right, I'll make a couple of comments here. If this were amended to just recognize what Mr. Worley just told us, and also state that this would not, the city will not commit any funds to this, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But the way this is worded, it goes down the path that Alder Wilkie just warned us about, which is to reopen the question of funding restoration and renovation of private property. If the homeowners association deeded that land to the city, it would be a different thing, because then it would be a public park and it would be appropriate to spend money on that. But I hope you will not vote for something that requires the expenditure of private, city money, public money, taxpayer money on private property. Not because we have anything against the homeowners association, but because we have private property all over the city. And if the homeowners along the Menominee River or the Blue Mountain Country Club experience a flooding event, they could come to us and ask for the same consideration. Why doesn't the city spend money on restoration of the riverbed along the country club, or those homes along 100th Street that front on the riverfront? That's inappropriate. I don't think I need to remind the council, but I will remind taxpayers that we are being confronted right now with major financial problems in this city. We are an extremely well-managed city with a AAA bond rating, but that's in peril. The Wisconsin legislature has made it difficult for every community in this state to maintain its services because of the way it funds municipalities. The federal government just announced that Wauwatosa is going to have to spend $100 million over a 10-year period on replacing lead laterals. That's going to start in 2027. That's going to put a severe burden on our ratepayers for our water and sewer projects. The Civic Center project has been estimated at somewhere between $50 and $70 million. That's a need that we may not be able to address anytime soon because of all the rest of it. With the property tax levy cap imposed by the legislature, we are struggling to maintain city services in a city that has a AAA bond rating. That's absurd. We have needs in our police and fire departments that can't be met. We are facing what, in a phrase, is the fiscal cliff. And if we're going to start talking about the expenditure of public money on private land, we are doing a disservice to our residents. So I hope you will keep those thoughts in mind when you vote on this amendment. Is there any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll call for a vote, and I'll ask for a roll call, please.
This is on the amendment.
Only on the amendment. Yes.
Could we repeat the amendment again?
The way I've got it written is to consider the inclusion of restoration or naturalization of the open channel portion of Schoonmaker Creek.
All right. Everybody got it? All right. Roll call, please.
Okay. Alderperson Lowe.
No.
Mindel.
Aye.
Moldenauer.
Aye.
Morgan.
Nope.
Phillips.
No.
Wilkie.
No.
Brannon.
Aye.
Champagne.
I meant no.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Champagne.
No.
Dolan.
No.
Foley.
No.
Franzen.
No.
Gustafson.
No.
And Lewis.
No.
That fails on a 2-11 vote. All right, we're back to the motion in chief, which is to approve alternative B for Schoonmaker Creek. Any discussion on that? Any discussion? All right. Let's take a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Alderperson Lowe.
Aye. Yes.
Okay. Mindel.
Aye.
Moldenauer.
Aye.
Morgan.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Wilkie.
Aye.
Brannon.
Aye.
Champagne.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Franzen.
Aye.
Gustafson.
Aye.
And Lewis.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
That passes unanimously. Our final item under Community Affairs is the resolution naming the city park at 116th Street, Gilbert Avenue, and Gilbert Avenue, Firefly Grove Park. Is there any discussion on that? Alder Morgan?
I just have a real brief comment since it's near our district, and it was in our district. While I was maybe hoping for some naming rights on a project like this, I realize it's a pretty tough go these days and in the general environment. So, and I think this name, it went through the process. It reflects city branding and our history very well. And I'll end it by saying I think almost any one of the backyards on the west side could be nicknamed or could be named Firefly Grove Park on a summer night. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We have 3 items from the Financial Affairs Committee plus bills and claims.